Good afternoon, this is Angela with Parker's Permaculture. I just ducked into the shade. I have been outside in the veggie patch picking veggies to go on our homemade pizza for dinner tonight. I really like dwarf curly kale, very baby summer squash, like just those kind of petite, very, very tender squash, so good on pizza. Cherry tomatoes, great way to use them up. I'm going to keep picking, but I was getting a little overheated and thought I would get out of the sun for a second. I also need to go in the front yard and pick plums for dessert so I can make a galette. There's a scrub jay that's upset because there is a sharp-shinned hawk in the area, or maybe a Cooper's hawk. So she's not happy. As I'm sitting here kind of cooling off for a second, I just wanted to address something that came up on Instagram yesterday, and conversation I had with another person who used the hashtag permaculture, and so their post came up in my feed because I follow that hashtag. And it was sort of a terse conversation. In permaculture, we really strive to have access to whole, nutrient-dense, sustainably produced food. Like, that's really at the core of a lot of what people are seeking when they go for permaculture, is to nourish their bodies with sustainably produced food that is full of good things for them and makes them feel strong and vital and cared for. And I think that that's really awesome. I got into organic gardening and then into permaculture. Oh, we're going to have a neighbor mowing. Sorry about that. For many of those reasons as well. I love the element of permaculture design. I also love that we are thinking about producing our food in a way that nourishes our bodies, and also by consuming food raised or grown with sustainable and regenerative practices, we are renewing the earth at the same time. We are nourishing our bodies, we are nourishing the earth. And actually, I think that might be a pressure washer. So I'm going to move into the front yard and pick my plums here for dessert. So I think though in permaculture, so this meme that this person shared was basically like, if you're obese, it's because you eat bad food. I don't want to get into the politics of fat phobia and obesity other than to say that you can't judge somebody's health and how nutrient dense and nutritious their diet is based on their appearance. Thinness is not correlated to healthiness. In fact, the periods in my life when I have been the thinnest, I have been the most mentally and physically unwell in my life. So I think that's true for a lot of people, and also it facilitates the spreading of really strong messages that are negative and don't work well for bringing people into permaculture. If you're body shaming people, if you're telling people with certain body types that they are inherently worse and less healthy and a drain on the system, or that they must necessarily not be consuming the good, rich, organic, healthy foods that thin people are, which is again a fallacy, we are not drawing people into permaculture. And so I think that's a two-pronged problem there. We can't correlate body size with how healthy somebody is or how nutrient dense the food is they're consuming. Oh, I see some extra blueberries. I'm going to steal and put them on my pizza. Don't judge me. I like blueberries on my pizza. So in permaculture, we definitely want to have that nutrient dense food. And in order to do that, we need to feed the soil, right? So that the plants are nutrient dense because they are uptaking from the soil and the soil microbiome. And that means that the food we eat will be inherently more nutritious and feed our bodies better. And I think that's great. I think that's wonderful. But I think it's also important to remember that not everybody has access to the same kinds of foods that those of us that grow our own have access to. And not everybody can afford local organic produce, which is why I think it's important that we change our industrial food system so that no matter what your socioeconomic status is, or no matter whether you live in, look at this beautiful little orb weaver, no matter whether you live in an urban area or a rural area, you should have, I believe it's a human right to access whole, nutritious foods. But there's a lot of politics around what is a real food, what is healthy whole foods. There's a lot of cultural connotations for that, because some things that some cultures deem really nutritious and delicious, other cultures do not. So I think it's important to be aware of the enculturation and upbringing that people have that really influences the kinds of foods that they see as healthy and that they eat. And also that when we want to draw people into permaculture, I'm going to go through this spider web here real quick. Hopefully I won't bump her off. Okay. I'm going to go through this part of the garden here. When we are talking to folks about permaculture and we are wanting to bring them into a greater understanding that permaculture is resilient living made for everybody, and that it can benefit everybody no matter what circumstances you're in or what kind of area of the world you live in, I think it's really important to remember that positive messages bring people into permaculture, and messages that honor different ways of eating and are culturally sensitive, right? And so I don't know where I'm going with this. I just felt really strongly when I saw this person make this comment, basically like, if you're obese, then it's because you eat highly processed, nutrient poor food. And it just felt really judgmental and difficult for me to read, and I had a really strong reaction to it, especially as a person who's had thin privilege most of their life. Like, I know that the foods I eat have varied very much depending on my circumstances, and that the shape of my body has varied very much depending on things going on in my life. And I think that if we get in a place where we are judging others based on their appearance, we're not bringing people into permaculture, and we're not helping them push for resilient living. And I think it's fair to criticize the industrial food system. I think it's fair to look at an industrial food system and say, this is not sustainable, this is not feeding people, we're feeding people empty calories that don't nourish their bodies. That's super well and good, but I'm just really struggling with criticizing individuals, and particularly when they may or may not have access to the same things that you or I have access to. So maybe that's a controversial opinion, but I just don't think that we're going to do any good for permaculture by criticizing, try not to scar this plum here, by criticizing folks. We need to criticize the system that has brought about a lack of access and an inequity in our food system, and has deprived people of good whole foods, and has deprived them of seasonal eating, and has deprived them of nourishing, nutrient-dense foods, and also how to prepare them. Our culture has lost a lot of that. So let's criticize the systems that have brought that about, and let's work through positive design to change those systems. Let's encourage people to come to permaculture, because it will make them more resilient. I believe it will give them peace. It will help them have a stronger relationship with the earth to which they are already connected, and a stronger relationship with other people. But let's not criticize folks' appearance and make assumptions about their food or their food politics based on that. So that's my little rant. I'm going to go in and make pizza, and I'm also going to make a delicious plum galette. I'm going to let this bus pass by real quick. I will be back. I really want to talk about this plum tree, so I will make a little video about that tomorrow and share with you all about one of my favorite plums for August and September. And I'll be back soon. Stay safe, and hope that you have a wonderful summer afternoon full of rich, nourishing meals and good company. Thanks.